So this could be a fun drinking game over the next week. Take a shot every time you hear a speaker at the RNC say the Republican Party is the party of life, or every time you hear a speaker argue for overturning Roe v. Wade. Drink up. Or, and this is the bonus, if you hear a Republican say the words legitimate rape, a la Todd Akin, you could just finish the whole bottle. Though something tells me that Todd Akin isn't going to be allowed within 100 yards of the RNC stage this week, maybe 100 miles. Still, we should expect an endless stream of social wedge issues to be thrown around in Tampa over the next few days, primarily to distract voters from the real agenda of today's Republican Party, which is to destroy the middle class and redistribute all the way to the very top, all of the middle class's money, give it all to guys like Mitt Romney. Heck, the Republican Party's official platform this year calls for a constitutional ban on abortion, even in the cases of rape and incest, a position also held by Todd Akin and vice presidential candidate Paul Ryan. But does this hardline stance against abortion really make Republicans the so-called party of life? And does it also mean that Democrats are waging a war against human life? My next guest thinks so. Dr. Carol Swain joins me now. She's a professor of political science and law at Vanderbilt University and author of the book, Be the People, a call to reclaim America's faith and promise. Dr. Swain, welcome back.
It's my pleasure.
You argue that the Obama administration is at war with human life. Why would you say such a thing?
Oh, there's so much evidence of that. I look at President Obama's career, starting with the time he was in the state legislature when he opposed the Infant Born Alive Act. That legislation had to do with instances where abortions failed and viable babies were born alive, whether or not medical attention could be rendered to those babies. And we're all familiar with the statement he made that he didn't want any of his daughters to be punished with a baby. But what made me make the statement recently that his administration is at war with life concerns this legislation that went into effect August 1st, in which a young woman as young as 15 can be sterilized without parental consent. And it's one thing allowing young people to get abortions without their parents' consent, but a situation where a young woman could actually be sterilized.
But Carol, legislation does not start in the White House. Legislation starts in the House of Representatives. And to the best of my knowledge, legislation like you just described never went anywhere.
The one where Nancy Pelosi said we have to pass the bill to know what's in it, well, that's what was in it. And a lot of legislators did not know that. It had to be pointed out to them. And to me, you and other progressives should be up in arms, because I remember back in the 1970s when I had relatives who were sterilized. They went into the hospital having their first child, sometimes in their teens. They were handed paperwork, they signed it, they were sterilized. 10 years later, they were married, they wanted to have children, they were sterilized.
Are you suggesting, Carol, that this is some variation on eugenics, that there's a racial component to this?
Absolutely.
So we have a black president who's trying to reduce the population of black people in America?
But you know that's true. We both know it's true. Yes, I think so, because he cooperates with Planned Parenthood's agenda, and it's very much an agenda to get rid of certain populations. It may not just be black people and Hispanics, but also people that...
99% of what Planned Parenthood does is things like mammograms and pap tests. How is that eugenics?
They don't do mammograms. They do breast exams. They don't do mammograms. So that's already been proven. Yeah. But the thing is, the Obama administration, whether it's not the preborn children, the sterilization so that young women will not be able to have children, or eventually services to the elderly, they are at war with human life. They're so concerned about the carbon footprint that they're doing everything they can to reduce the population.
The population
that gets reduced is the minority population. And you and other progressives should be up in arms.
So I'm just trying to understand this, Carol. So the tree huggers, the environmentalists, the people who are concerned about too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, they're pushing an agenda of sterilizing African-American young women, 15-year-old African-American women, without their consent or knowledge, so that there will be fewer people producing carbon dioxide. Isn't it the rich white guys who produce the most CO2?
That way. I would say that they are pushing an agenda to reduce the population, and the population that tends to get targeted by the abortions and will be affected most by this sterilization will tend to be minorities and people who are poor. And so the tree huggers, they are trying to reduce the population because they're worried about greenhouse gases and the carbon footprint, but the effect of that disproportionately impacts minority communities.
But Carol, you know, one of the Koch brothers with their private jet, or Mitt Romney with his private jet, or anybody worth a couple $100 million who owns a private jet, is going to have a huge carbon footprint compared to a 15-year-old African-American woman in Washington, D.C.
I agree, but you know something, there's been research put out by liberals saying that a baby has a huge carbon footprint. And I mean, that's literature that you or your researchers can look up. And I'm saying you, but I really don't mean you because I know you're a good guy. But I believe that progressives need to monitor the Obama administration.
You think
and
we're
some
just
of
being
its
suckered
policies.
by these guys?
If Republicans were doing it, we'd call it genocide. We'd be up in arms. We'd call it racist. Just because it's being done by Democrats doesn't make it right.
Do you think that someone who's been raped and will face psychological trauma for the rest of their life should be forced to have their rapist's baby?
I don't think anyone should be forced to do anything. I think this is America.
So you think women should have the right to make the choice to have an abortion if they're raped?
I don't think anyone should be forced to do anything. I think I value the sanctity of human life. I think that abortion should certainly be available to women in life-threatening situations. And that's pretty much my position on it. If you look at Ethel Waters and many great people that we know that had many talents, they were the product of rapes. Their parents, their mothers decided to bear the child, and that child turned out to be someone that contributed greatly to our society. Yeah. So what I think is that we need to value the sanctity of human life, and in those cases where there's incest and where there's rape, I don't think you should automatically decide that a child that's born under those circumstances or is conceived under those circumstances that they deserve to die because of that.
I got it.
I think
Dr. Carol Swain, Carol, we're out of time here, but you made your point, and you did so very eloquently. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Thank you.